We are in day 153 in 2 Samuel 19, and we all know the saying, it is good to be king, right? Well, when I read this chapter, I'm like, wow, King David has had his share. First, Saul tried to kill him because he was jealous. Absalom, his own son, tried to kill him. His wife, Michal, mocked him because he was out worshiping the Lord and she in normal, regular clothes, not in his kingly robes. And here he had a heart for God and was out worshiping the Lord, and she mocked him and said, that doesn't look kingly at all, and basically said he looked like a fool. And now we see other people. Oh, let's also not forget that all of Israel, Absalom got all of Israel to come against David. So he just had to fight his way through the entire time. And here we go again. So let's read. So it says here that he was going to basically give favor on Amasa because he had helped him with Judah fight the Israelites. And David said, like Joab, may God strike me and even kill me if I do not appoint you, Amasa, as commander of my army in this palace. Now let's remember that. And then it goes on to say, then Amasa convinced all the men of Judah, and they responded unanimously. They sent word to the king, return to us and bring back all who are with you. So he seemed to be for King David, and we'll get back to that, so hold that thought. So then a man, Shimei, came to David and said he was very repentive. He was on the wrong side of history, and he came and he humbled himself before King David when David was returning back to Israel, where he rightfully belonged. And he humbled himself and said, forgive the terrible thing your servant did when you left Jerusalem. May the king put it out of his mind. I know how much I sinned. That is why I have come here today, the very first person in all of Israel to greet you, my lord the king. And then Abishai says, Shimei should die, for he cursed the Lord's anointed king. And then here is David, quick to forgive. And it says, who asked your opinion, you sons of Zeruiah? David explained, why have you become my adversary today? This is not a day for execution, but for celebration, because he was returning as king. Today I am once again the king of Israel. Then turning to Shimei, David vowed, your life will be spared. But this is interesting. Do you remember a couple days ago when Ziba says to David, when David says, where is Mephibosheth? Where is he? And remember, he was the crippled son of Jonathan that the king restored and said, you come and you sit at the king's table. You will dine with me every night, and I will give you all the property that would belong to Saul and David. And yet he said to Ziba, where is Mephibosheth? Why is he not here? Why is he not on Judah's side? And he goes, oh, he took Israel's side. Well, now Mephibosheth is claiming that Ziba deceived him to get basically all of his property, which David said, well, then if he didn't come, you can have all the property. So his plan worked out perfectly. So here's what happens. Mephibosheth replied, my lord, the king, my servant Ziba deceived me. I told him, saddle my donkey so I can go with the king, for as you know, I am crippled. Ziba has slandered me by saying that I refuse to come, but I know that my lord the king is like an angel of God. So do what you think is best. Because he wanted to go, supposedly. And it's so interesting because when he claimed that Ziba deceived him and lied about him, David said, you've said enough. David replied, I decided that you and Ziba will divide your land equally between you. Now, don't you think that's interesting? That kind of says to me, maybe David didn't know Who was right? Do I believe Ziba, who's been a faithful commander of my army, or do I believe Mephibosheth, who, dined at the table, and I certainly gave him favor? And he said, well, basically just divide the property between the two of you. But here is the person with the correct heart. And I think this is to me, this says everything. Who was the true faithful one? And here's what Mephibosheth's answer was. Give him all of it. Mephibosheth said, I am content just to have you safely back, my lord the king. He didn't care about the property, so it kind of says to me that he was probably the right one. Now, God only knows, but just from what we read, it seemed like maybe Ziba really did deceive him. So in the end, Sheba, there always has to be an adversary, right? So then Sheba came along, and he tried to stir problems again and get Israel away from King David. So you know what? You just can't win being king, can you? So it says here, then Sheba said, down with the dynasty of David. You have no interest in the son of Jesse. Or we have no interest, excuse me. Come on, you men of Israel, back to your homes. So all the men of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba. But the men of Judah stayed with their king and escorted him from the Jordan River to Jerusalem. Now remember, Absalom took bad counsel, and he went in and slept with all the concubines of David. And because of that, when David returned, it says he never slept with one of them again, and they had to go and live as widows because Absalom basically had defiled all of the concubines. So in the end, this is the interesting part about Amasa. So the interesting part about Amasa is King David said he was going to make him a commander. So one of the first things he asked of him is go out into the Judah troops, mobilize them, and bring them back within 3 days. And as he was on his way back, Joab saw him. I believed he was filled with jealousy and literally took a dagger out when he got down to greet him, saying, cousin, and pretended to give him a kiss and literally put the dagger, right through Amasa and killed him immediately. I'll tell you what, Joab was a tough dude, commander of David's army, but I think he also got very jealous. He did not want anybody else being a commander along with him, and he committed a murder. We are on John 21, and I just love this. So the disciples were hanging out, and they said, let's go fishing. So just like old times, they got in their fishing boat, and they went out to fish, and they fished all night and caught nothing. So here we go. Go, Jesus. At dawn, Jesus was standing on the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who he was. He called out, fellows, have you caught any fish? No, they replied. Then he said, throw out your net on the right side of the boat, and you'll catch some. So they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. The disciples Jesus loved said to Peter, it's the Lord. They had already seen this happen, and now here is Jesus performing the same miracles that he did before. And it says that this was the third time that Jesus appeared to the disciples. So they come up. Can you imagine that homecoming, that greeting again for the third time? And it says Jesus had breakfast prepared for them. He had fish cooking over charcoal and fresh bread. And there they were with their Messiah again. Can you imagine the feeling that must have been done, that they must have had? And again, the third time that Jesus appeared to them. And as they were at breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And Peter said, of course, Jesus, I love you more. Feed my sheep. He asked him a second time, Peter, do you love me? Of course I love you, Jesus. Feed my sheep. Jesus asked him the third time, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, Jesus, we basically gave up everything to follow you. You know that we love you. What did he say? Feed my sheep. Now, there's theories out there about this. I think Jesus emphasized 3 times, he asked him 3 times for two different reasons. I think he did it to emphasize that this is your calling, that we are here to feed the people, feed them spiritually. But then I also believe that he asked 3 times because there are 3 parts to man. We are born with a physical, a mental, and a spiritual being. So I personally happen to believe that Jesus said, Peter, do you love me? Physically feed my people. Go out, and God says, take care of the widows, take care of the orphans. Do what I've commanded you and called you to do, is go take care of others, take care of the poor. Give, and it shall be given to you. Then the second time, Peter, do you love me? Of course I love you, Lord. Then feed my people mentally. We need to teach people. We need to teach them the Word of God, how to learn how we're supposed to live in this life. So we have to teach them mentally too, because I believe that this right here is our manual, our daily guidebook of how we are supposed to live our lives while on this earth. And the only way we can learn that is if we truly learn the character of Jesus. So I believe it's mentally. And then the third time, Peter, do you love me? Of course I love you, Jesus. I've given up everything. Feed my sheep. And we are his sheep, and Jesus is the shepherd, like we've read several times before. And this is where Jesus wants us to feed them spiritually. We are supposed to lead people spiritually to the Lord. And how do we do that? Through the Holy Spirit giving us guidance, who reveals the truth to us, who opens our heart, opens our mind so we can be open. And what has Jesus said? You must be like a little child. We have to have childlike faith. Well, that's not a problem to me. I've never been this, amazing intellectual person that I have to intellectualize everything. Plus, I had the advantage of parents who taught me the love of Jesus, and I accepted Jesus in my heart at 5 years old. So I never had to get over the intellectual, mental part of it. And by the way, who are we to question God? Does it make sense that the Messiah of the universe had to die on a cross? Does it make sense a blood atonement? Does it make sense Jesus being born of a Virgin Mary? None of it makes sense in our intellectual mind, but it was God's plan. So I just say, okay, God, if this is your plan, I'm going with it, because you have certainly changed my life. And then lastly, Jesus also did many other things. If they were all written down, I suppose the whole world could not contain the books that would be written. How amazing is that? We could not contain them, but yet we have enough to we say, yes, Jesus, we believe. Psalm 120. We finally got through Psalm 119, that long psalm, long, beautiful song. But Psalm 20, it says, I took my troubles to the Lord. I cried out to him, and he answered my prayer. Rescue me, O Lord, from liars and from all deceitful people. Boy, don't we need that. We just read about, was it Ziba or was it Mephibosheth that betrayed David and turned away and was deceptive? We don't know who to believe, but what we know is we can turn to God, and he is going to guide us into all truth. And then Proverbs 16 and 7 says, how much better to get wisdom than gold, and good judgment than silver. The path of the virtuous leads away from evil. Whoever follows the path is safe. Let's stay on God's path and be safe.